Hello, everybody. I see Mrs. Bruce has joined me again. Thank you, Mrs. Bruce. As you can see, we have a few more extra people this week, which is great. So I hope, can everyone see my screen? Okay, just so that you know, we are recording this session. And as with all of Sonata's webinars, if you go to YouTube and search for Sonata, you will find the recordings of any of the webinars we have presented. We've had a couple of really good ones on the vaccine, and you'll find those very interesting. And last week we presented on assisted living and independent living. Today our focus will be primarily on memory care and some indicators that maybe memory care is the right choice, or when it will be the right choice. So I am Julie Fernandez. I am the Director of Team Development and Training for Sonata Senior Living. And I'm here to talk to you today about memory care. And if you have any questions, if you would use the chat box to ask those questions, and we'll answer them as we go, or at the end, we'll have everybody unmute and be able to have a discussion then as well. So if you're unsure about how to use the chat feature, just hold off until the end and we'll talk then, okay? Okay, so let's get started. First of all, I'd like you to know some numbers. Numbers are that 70% of seniors will require some form of long-term care during their life. The senior population is increasing, with those 85 years and older currently at 15% of the population, and this is rising and is expected to increase to about 25% of the population by the year 2050. In 2010, 6 million Americans were over the age of 85. By 2050, it will quadruple to 21 million. 1 in 8 people over the age of 65 have Alzheimer's disease. And 50% of seniors over the age of 85 have Alzheimer's disease. And 2/3 of those are women. Statistics indicate that 1 in 3 households in America is currently providing caregiving to a family member. And 33% of us baby boomers born between 46 and 64 care for our parents. So today we're going to talk a little bit of an overview of assisted living. And the reason I'm doing that is because in the state of Florida, memory care communities are licensed as assisted living communities. We'll talk about the memory care assisted living specifically. And I'd like to cover a little bit of what skilled and rehab services are covered here in Florida. And again, everything we talk about today, as far as licensing and regulations, does pertain just to the state of Florida. So as we talk about assisted living in general, assisted living is designed for people who still have some independence or are able to live fairly independently, but may require some services. Now, these services can be meal preparation, a lot of medication administration or supervision is what we see, maybe some assistance with bathing, dressing, grooming, or even mobility. A good thing to remember is that your typical assisted living community is not considered a secure community. And that's important when we start to talk about memory care assisted living. That is one of our big defining features, is one is considered secure, one is not. Assisted living in the state of Florida is licensed by the Agency for Healthcare Administration, or what we call AHCA. And there are 3 licenses that primarily exist for assisted living, which is your standard license, which you need to operate any assisted living. There is a limited nursing services license, or LNS, which provides an opportunity for nurses that work for that assisted living to do an increased level of nursing care, which is not allowed under the standard license. And then there is the ECC, or extended congregate care, which allows total care in certain activities of daily living, or ADLs. Those are your dressing, grooming, bathing. Those are not allowed to be total care in an assisted living unless you have the extended congregate care, or ECC license. So it is up to the assisted living community, other than their standard license, which of the other two licenses they would like to obtain. And that comes with additional regulations, additional survey opportunities by the state of Florida. There is also a limited mental health license, which assisted livings can obtain if they plan to care for residents who have more mental health challenges than physical challenges, such as those mostly living in assisted living. Your assisted living services are based typically on a monthly fee, which is based on the size of the apartment or room that is selected. They can be shared, or what's called semi-private, or they could be a private room, depending on your community of choice. And by Florida law, because assisted living communities rarely provide a full kitchen in any of those apartments, they are required to provide 3 full meals a day. Housekeeping and laundry is typically provided. Daily activities is typically provided. Most assisted living communities, they are required to have 24/7 on-site staff. Now, that does not necessarily mean they have to be awake at all times. Some of your smaller communities actually provide sleeping quarters for those staff who work around the clock. They may work 3 days on and have 4 days off, those kinds of things. So they are provided an opportunity to sleep. So as you're looking at assisted living options, consider whether or not that's something you're comfortable with before you go with some of the smaller communities, which offer very good care, but their staff may not be awake all night. And assisted living communities can provide what's called respite or temporary stays, as well as day services. So a respite stay could be typically a 7-day to 14-day stay, where you really get the opportunity to test out the amenities, see if you like it, or if you are a caregiver and you need to go away, maybe you're going to go into the hospital for some surgery, or you're going to take a vacation with some friends, and you don't want a long-term solution, you want a temporary solution, you can choose a respite stay. And then day services are also a great opportunity to get your loved one adjusted to a community and not be sitting at home all day. Perhaps you're still working. You want to make sure they're eating during the day, that they're not just sitting and watching television. And so day services are also available at most assisted living communities. And both respite and day services are a choice for that community. They are not required to provide either one of those services. So again, don't be surprised if you ask around if someone's providing those services. The answer may be no. And during this last year with the pandemic, with the COVID-19 situation, most communities stopped providing respite and day services because of the contact tracing and the requirements for admission and the all of the testing that had to be done. We are seeing, particularly with Sonata's communities, the respite services are opening up, and we're working now on getting our day services opened up with the fact that most of our residents have been vaccinated. Here are some startling facts. Some of these numbers are repeated from the previous slide, but I really think everyone needs to understand that we're talking serious business here when we talk assisted living, and the number of people who are estimated to have Alzheimer's disease or another form of dementia. So an estimated 5.8 million Americans of all ages are living with Alzheimer's disease in 2019. This number included an estimated 5.6 million people aged 65 and older, and approximately 200,000 individuals under 65 who have what we call younger or early onset Alzheimer's disease. Those are big numbers we're seeing now with the younger onset. It is becoming more prevalent with people in their 30s, 40s, and 50s being diagnosed with younger onset Alzheimer's disease. It's unprecedented right now. 1 in 10 people age 65 or older, which is about 10%, have Alzheimer's. And again, 2/3 of us are women. Did you know that Alzheimer's disease is the 6th leading cause of death in the United States? Heart disease, cancer, chronic lower respiratory diseases, accidents, and strokes are what precede Alzheimer's disease in that list. 1 in 3 caregivers is 65 years or older, and approximately 2/3 of those caregivers, again, are women. More specifically, over 1/3 of dementia caregivers are daughters. As the number of older Americans grows, so too will the number of new and existing cases of Alzheimer's. By 2050, the number of people aged 65 and older with Alzheimer's disease may grow to a projected 13.8 million, barring the development of any medical breakthroughs to prevent or slow or even cure Alzheimer's disease. So with those numbers, let's look at what's available for memory care assisted living. As I mentioned earlier, a memory care assisted living community is an assisted living community that has become secured, and it is designed for people with a diagnosis of some form of dementia, Alzheimer's being the primary form of dementia that we see. And these residents require a higher level of supervision. They need additional assistance. And so the memory care communities are structured to have programs intended to encourage participation in personal care, exercise, music, and cognitive engagement. So the memory care communities, when I hear people say, oh, they have memory care is a form, a type of living. It's not necessarily a specific program. Hopefully, any memory care community you look at has a diverse number of programs that are intended to help those who have a cognitive failure retain as much independence as possible. So we want to allow them to continue to get dressed or continue to eat unassisted. But in doing that, there has to be additional structure in place that's not normally available in what you would consider a standard, quote unquote, assisted living. Now, again, the memory care assisted living has the same licensing as an assisted living. When we build or open a memory care community, we don't get a special license for that. We get the standard regular license, LNS or limited nursing services, or even extended congregate care licensing. There is no memory care license. What the state of Florida looks at is if you are promoting a memory care community or offering these services, that you meet the criteria of number one, being able to provide the care you promise. That's really all they look at with that. So the licensing is completely the same. It's just they look to make sure that your internal structure is built to support those with a diagnosis of a dementia. When might it be time for memory care? So when something acute happens, like a traumatic incident, a car accident, or terminal diagnosis, the natural reaction is to jump in and make plans. On the other hand, age-related cognitive decline, such as Alzheimer's disease and dementia, doesn't always cause an immediate impact. Typically, the signs and symptoms of this disease unfold over a period of time, making it difficult to know when this type of care is actually going to be required. The progression of the disease is different based on the type of dementia. And so you don't always know when is the right time. When do I need memory care for my loved one? There are psychological and emotional impacts of dementia-related conditions on a person's spouse, on their loved ones, on their family. Denial, emotionally driven conversations, and the thought that caregiving can't be all that difficult. I think many caregivers hear that from their family. It adds to the challenge of making a decision to place a loved one in a memory care community. We have to remember that those that have dementia are not to be relied upon to make decisions about their living situation. We cannot always honor promises that we have made someone. Most caregivers cannot foresee the challenges that are ahead of them when they decide to care for someone with dementia. It has a lot of unexpected twists and turns. One of the first things we need to look at is memory care right. Is there a diagnosis of Alzheimer's, dementia, or other dementia-related diagnoses? So there's over 100 forms of dementia being diagnosed right now. And many people can have more than one form of dementia. So everyone is forgetful at times, and forgetfulness is part of the normal aging process. The ability to task and follow directions is obviously, we're greater at that when we're younger, but as we age, that is a normal loss that we experience through normal aging. The difference, I tell people, is it's not so much when you forget where you put your keys. It's when someone forgets what their keys are for. So once those things start to happen and a diagnosis is given of dementia, it's time to begin having conversations. And for many families, this is a very challenging time. The desire to live at home as long as possible is understandable and encouraged in the beginning stages, as long as there are no serious safety issues. At the same time, this is your best opportunity to begin visiting, touring, and exploring reputable, licensed memory care communities in your area. The process results in a wealth of information and resources. And believe it or not, we see many people that have been diagnosed themselves starting this process, coming into tour, coming in to look at what their choices are, and letting their families know what their decision will be as to where they would like to live. As mentioned above, studies show it's better to transition individuals from home into a memory care before more dangerous signs and symptoms of dementia or Alzheimer's surface. You don't want to risk your safety or your loved one's safety by waiting too long to make a decision. Transitioning earlier allows a loved one to have a say in where they would like to live. It also enables a necessary adjustment time. When someone is familiar with their surroundings, they are more likely to form relationships, they will form connections with staff, and they are they're able to do this when they're earlier in the dementia process rather than later in the dementia process. So the transitioning is challenging no matter where you are in the process, but it will be a shorter transition time for someone who is considered higher functioning or has not progressed along this journey too far yet. With the onset of Alzheimer's disease and dementia, engagement in a variety of activities and programming is vital. It helps people maintain socialization. It helps maintain routines. It helps reduce common dementia-related behaviors and agitation. A behavior could be repeatedly asking the same questions, a quick anger response, the loss that if they go out to drive to the grocery store and don't come home for several hours because they've gotten lost. Those are security issues, and engaging someone in a secured environment that allows them to still maintain as much independence as possible is important. It actually shows that it delays some of the loss that will eventually occur with dementia, and allows them to use their energies in a very positive way. Think about young children. We always say no to them. No, don't touch that. No, don't go there. No, don't do that. We're dealing with adults here, and that's the last thing they want to hear from a caregiver is no. No, you can't cook that. No, you can't drive the car. No, you can't walk the neighborhood. And so you have to, but they still have a lot of energy, particularly if they're younger. So we want to find a way where they can use that energy in a very positive way. And in doing so, this will actually allow the caregiver a little less stressful environment as well. And that leads us right into caregiver stress. Caregiver stress is 24/7. If someone doesn't engage in taking care of themselves and using respite care, it becomes an impossible situation to sustain. Even with qualified in-home care providers, those with mid to later stages of memory loss become very challenging to care for. The enormity of the unceasing amount of care that has to be provided is typically more than most households can accommodate. If you're approaching or have already reached a point where caregiving is all-consuming, it's basically past time to consider memory care. We have a lot of people who find themselves in the sandwich generation. They are caring for an aging parent, and they have a job, and they have their own family. So memory care is a great solution for these people in that sandwich generation. People with younger onset dementia provide a whole different set of challenges, as they are still more likely to be independent in their ADLs, but they're making very poor safety decisions. But because of their younger age, they're still very physically active. So all of this is just an increased burden and stress on the caregiver. Has there been a decline in overall health? Memory loss sets in no matter what age. And so the ability to drive a car, make a grocery list, prepare food, remember daily medications, or even a reminder to eat becomes challenging for most. When you start losing track of days, your circadian rhythm becomes flipped over, you're up all night, you're sleeping all day, sundowners starts to set in, which is a very active kind of wandering behavior, insomnia, other sleep orders. These are types of things we see with a cognitive decline. So if you're starting to see people who are experiencing rapid weight loss, maybe you're going to visit mom or dad and there's very little food in the house, in the cabinets, there's evidence that medication is not being taken or it's being overtaken. They're neglecting their personal hygiene. They're perhaps becoming more hunched in their posture. There's inexplicable bruises or injuries, unpaid bills, missed appointments. These are the things that indicate someone is seriously declining and is now not in a safe environment in their own home. Those with dementia are more prone to being injured at home and are less able to remember how to seek help. There are 30% of people with a diagnosis of Alzheimer's disease who suffer from a psychosis associated with the dementia, and it's typically hallucinations and or delusions. both of which automatically cause an increase in falls. The hallucination that there is a cat in the room that you have to step over, or have to pick a baby up off the floor, even though those things are not there, those are causing an increased level of falls. And so we're starting to see another safety issue here because of those psychosis attached to that dementia. But if you find yourself worrying about a loved one's well-being on a regular basis, it would mean that you need to really look into an assisted living, particularly a memory care assisted living, to ensure that they are safe and to relieve the stress of worrying about them so much. If you're noticing you have little to no social life, every family member I know that has struggled with a loved one with dementia, particularly Alzheimer's, their world starts to become very small. They know that taking someone out of the house takes them away from their normal environment, and behaviors can be exhibited because of that. A lot of their friends, family, church groups, those kinds of things that they've always enjoyed and participated in, they're not as open to spending time with you perhaps anymore because they're embarrassed by the behaviors, or they're getting their feelings hurt because someone is saying something to them that's inappropriate. And so everyone starts to close their doors a little bit more and starts to not go out in the community and enjoy the things they've always enjoyed. And this is very true for the person suffering from dementia. They don't know how to participate anymore. Perhaps they don't know how to dial a phone anymore. Maybe the old phones that we used to have the rotary dial on is something they remember, but how long have those been gone? Now they look at the cell phone in front of them that 6 months ago they could use, but today they don't really know how to use it. And so being in an environment that provides the support, provides the activities, has music supported program, and music is amazing when it comes to being able to help someone with Alzheimer's or dementia. There should be supervised excursions and creative outlets. This is the foundation on which memory care assisted living communities are developed. And the positive benefits of these outlets are evidenced in how well people do in this environment. And lastly, if your instincts are telling you something's wrong, something's off, someone's not safe, I don't know if I can do this care anymore, anything, you listen to those little red flags, listen to your gut, because we've come to rely in the past to know when those things are right. We just can't let the sense of guilt overwhelm what our instincts are telling us. So what should you look for if you're going to go to look for an assisted living memory care? Number one, it needs to be secured. That's one of the things that safety is of utmost importance. A secured community does not mean their loved ones cannot have access, but those living within the community do not have the ability to come and go as freely as they have in the past, but it's keeping them safe. But we want to make sure they have access to an outdoor courtyard or an outdoor area. We all need natural light. We all want to be able to walk out a door and not feel like someone's telling us no. So as you look at communities, please look at one that provides the freedom to access a secured outdoor courtyard, and not just when the staff think it's okay for you to go out. Okay, this is a big thing I see at a variety of communities, is when the staff decides to unlock the doors, someone can go out. You need to find a place that's actually open access to the outdoors. You need to look at communities that have dementia certified memory care staff. It could be a memory care director, it could be the wellness director, the executive director, the marketing director. You need to look at people who know about cognitive decline. We don't want to just take an assisted living community and make the doors secure and feel like everything's okay. We want to have someone on site as often as possible who truly understands what's happening with the brain and whether or not the wandering behavior is a bad behavior. Maybe it's just part of the disease. What can we do to help people eat better? How come the brain is telling them that there's a cat on the floor? Whatever it is, we want to make sure dementia certified staff are available in that community. You want to look at their calendar. How engaging is it? I'll give you a little hint. TV is not an appropriate activity. So a community that shows a movie every night is not necessarily the kind of activity you want for your loved one. You want to see the 7 dimensions of wellness. Your calendar should have physical, emotional, intellectual, spiritual, environmental, social, and occupational activities. And they need to be adult driven. Art done with watercolors and colored pencils is more adult-like than a pre-printed page out of a coloring book with some color crayons. That is not an adult-like art activity. I'm very passionate about that, if you can't tell. Your community should have chef-inspired meals, just like your assisted living or your independent living, and your residents should have a choice of entree. So when you go to any restaurant and sit down and eat, you might have the choice of chicken or beef. It's no different in a memory care community. Don't just put down a plate of chicken. Everybody gets the same thing because that's what the staff thinks is okay. It's not okay. We're promoting independence. Let's choose what we'd like to have for dinner that night. At least have a limited number of choices. You should find a memory care community that has medication administration primarily, but some offer medication supervision. The difference is medication supervision by law in the state of Florida allows non-nursing, licensed nursing staff, a caregiver, for instance, a CNA, a certified nursing assistant, to be trained in how to provide medications. But they can't provide all medications. They cannot give injections. So if you have someone who is an insulin-dependent diabetic and you go to a community that does not have a nurse 24 hours a day, they're going to be on a standard dose of insulin only when the nurse is there. If they have a crisis during the night and need blood sugar testing and need additional insulin, perhaps, they're going to be sent to the hospital for that, because if there's not a nurse on site, a med tech, what we call the medication technicians, cannot provide injections. And they cannot do what are called PRN medications, or as needed medications. So there are rules around using a med tech for supervision versus having a licensed nurse on staff 24/7 who is managing all aspects of medication. And you also, what we have found is a smaller home-like environment is much more comfortable for people versus your large open spaces. People with Alzheimer's don't do well in large open spaces. They do better in a smaller environment where there's not as much room to get lost, walk down hallways where people can't see them. You get to a point with Alzheimer's disease that walking backwards or turning around to go a different direction is not normal for them. They can actually walk up to the end of a hallway and stand at the end of the hallway and not know where to go from there. So we want to make sure that the environment is small enough for them where someone always has eyes on them, and they can help those who find themselves unable to turn around or take a few steps backwards to get out of a situation. Who pays for memory care assisted living? Basically, in the state of Florida, it's a private pay situation. The only other forms of finance that may come in for you is if your loved one has a long-term care insurance policy. Long-term care insurance policies typically pay a daily rate based on the care level and type of policy. So certain policies require that you need assistance with 2 activities of daily living, maybe dressing and bathing. So your insurance policy will determine how much they pay and how long they pay. If you are a veteran or the surviving spouse of a veteran, there is something called veteran aid and attendance. Great benefit to have. So if you think someone in your family they served, or their spouse, they were married and their spouse is surviving, they may also qualify for a very nice benefit from the VA. Many people have life insurance policies that have a pretty substantial dollar amount associated with them. And so if they go into a community, they have the opportunity to work with a care funding organization such as Life Care Funding, which will buy their life insurance policy and give them a large percentage of the cash buyout. They will keep a percentage for their fee. So life insurance can be sold, and the money, take some of that money, prepay for funeral expenses, and then use that money to pay for living expenses while you're alive. And there are also bridge loans. Elder Life Financial is a primary company for this. They actually will look at your financial situation and say, okay, you're waiting for VA benefits, you've applied, but the dollars, they can take 6 months or more to come through. So we're going to bridge you a loan that will be paid back once your VA benefits arrive. Or perhaps you're selling a home and it's going to be on the market for a few months, but you need some cash now. So the Elder Life Financial offers that bridge loan for you until those dollars come through. If you don't have any of these insurances, VA aid and attendance, a life insurance policy you can sell, and bridge loans, whatever balance is owed comes out of your pocket. And memory care costs typically start at about $4,500 a month, and you can also have additional care costs associated with that. I think I had a question. Let's see what that question is. Okay, what is an example of an environmental activity for memory care clients? An environmental activity can be something such as gardening, going outdoors, even inside. If there are residents for an indoor environment that actually might still want to participate in cleaning. I don't know why. I hope I get to a point where I don't have to do any cleaning, but running a vacuum, helping to do dishes, those kinds of things are very, very much ingrained in many people as part of their normal day. So that type of environmental activity needs to be made available based on what they are interested in doing. So for somebody like me, I'm not interested in helping you vacuum, but I'll go outside and weed your garden. So let's, I hope that answers your question. All right, so let's keep going here. There we go. Let's talk a little bit about skilled nursing and rehab. Skilled nursing and rehab offers short and long-term care for individuals who have a need for rehabilitation services or who suffer from serious or persistent health issues that are too complicated to be treated at home or in an assisted living community. The typical stay in a rehab or nursing home is initiated by a hospitalization. Hospitalization right now is a 3-day stay in a hospital before primarily Medicare will take over the payment for the rehab center or the nursing home. These nursing homes and rehabs are licensed completely differently from assisted living. They are licensed through the Agency for Healthcare Administration, but also through an agency we call JCAHO, which is the Joint Commission on the Accreditation of Healthcare Organizations. Their regulations are much more stringent. How wide are the hallways? How high are the beds off the floor? What are the staffing ratios? Their staffing ratios are supposed to be better than assisted living. So they have more regulation, but for those people who have acute or serious health issues, they are allowed to do more nursing care. Let's put it that way. They can do IV care. They can do tracheotomies. They can care for residents that the assisted living licensing does not allow for. So it's typically not always a long-term. Not a lot of people live in nursing homes long-term too much anymore. You typically see them as rehab centers, you know, post-fall. Somebody has broken a hip or something and needs some rehab. But why would you choose a nursing home? The reason I have a little doctor picture on here is because most people think their doctor is whatever he says is gospel. And doctors know doctor stuff. Doctors know medical stuff. Doctors are not necessarily up to date on senior living options. That's not part of what they do. But because of that, they may recommend a nursing home to you because your mother can't go home anymore. So put her in this nursing home. He may not realize, I shouldn't say he or she may not realize that assisted living is actually a better option for you. But we try to educate our local physicians on these, but it's, you know, they have their preferences as well. But it may be a medical need. Your physician may be telling you, yeah, I know there's an assisted living. Once you recover from this serious medical condition, that would be a good option for you. But right now you're going to need skilled nursing or rehab. And there's also a financial difference here because Medicare and Medicaid are much more prevalent as payment types in nursing homes and rehabs than they are in assisted living. And we'll talk a little bit more about that. Medicare is insurance coverage. Most people reach the age of 65 plus, they go to a Medicare program. Medicare is health insurance. It does not cover any type of long-term care living situations. And there's a limit to how much Medicare will cover for those health situations. And a lot of that comes from the bundling programs that Medicare put together a couple of years ago, where they bundled their services. They kind of created a pot of money and said, a hip fracture is worth this pot of money. When you go to the emergency room and you have surgery and you're in the hospital 3 days and all of the doctor's bills and everything associated with the hospital is pulled out of that pot. And then they send you to a rehab center for rehab and they pull their money out of that pot. And that money is limited. So if you run out of that money, you're going to be paying privately after that because Medicare will only produce so much money based on the diagnosis. There is also the managed care, which is a Medicare replacement program. These are your advantage plans. This is where you're giving up your quote unquote typical Medicare for an advantage plan. They are also health insurance. Their payments may be different though than regular Medicare. So we always have to be very cautious when we look at our advantage plans and our Medicare replacement plans to make sure they're covering what we need at the time. You know, what is their prescription coverage, or what kind of supplemental plan do I still need to have on top of my managed replacement, my Medicare replacement? Medicaid is where your long-term living expenses can be covered. It is not just a health insurance. It is also covering long-term care. But there are qualifications for Medicaid. And there is what's called a 5-year look back. So as people start to spend down their dollars, they have to be out of money or very close to being out of money for a long period of time before they qualify for Medicaid. If you talk to your financial planners, sometimes there's ways around putting money in certain plans that removes it from that look back or is allowable under that Medicaid look back. But there's a certain income limit and a designated federal poverty level that must be met in order to qualify for Medicaid. Now, in the state of Florida, there is a small piece of that Medicaid program that was broken off and handed to assisted living communities because they realized they're paying far more for people to live in a nursing home than they would pay for people to live in an assisted living community. The problem is the little piece they broke off is so little, it doesn't help much. So many people need that piece of Medicaid in order to live in assisted living that it's always out of money. It always runs out of money. It always freezes. And so people can wait a long time for that Medicaid approval, and not every assisted living accepts Medicaid because there is a limited amount of money that you will get from the government, and that doesn't necessarily cover the costs associated with that person's care. So long-term care insurance will cover typically your stay in a nursing home or rehab, as will veterans aid and attendance. If you have none of the above, or if you have exhausted the monies in these other plans, you will pay out of pocket for whatever remaining care you need. So let's talk about how you find senior living options that are best for you. Number one way is you Google it, or you go onto social media. That is just the funniest term now, to be able to just say, go Google it. That's what we do. You can do the research in the privacy of your own home. You need to know the terminology, though, if you're going to be searching. If you want assisted living and you type in nursing home, you're not going to see what you need. And also be very aware that when these things pop up on a Google search, the advertising pops up first. Those companies that are paying for ads in that search engine will pop up first. So sometimes you have to kind of scroll down and see who you're looking for. Look for those websites. Look for information on all the different types of communities in your area. And when you get to someone's website, read their reviews. That's a big deal right now. Like anything you purchase, I know if I go onto Amazon to make a purchase, I read the reviews people wrote about a product. Read the reviews of the communities you're going to. There are always some disgruntled people that might write a bad review here or there, but overall your rating should be 4 or 5 stars for a Google review for you to consider that community. And another great place to do is go to that community's Facebook page. Websites use a lot of stock photos, and websites are harder to update over time. So they tend to not be as current with the actual goings on in an assisted living or a memory care community. But a Facebook page has real pictures of real people, of real activities that are going on, and they're not just stock photos. So you can actually get a real good taste and sense of what's going on in a community through their Facebook page. Talk to your primary care physician. Consider using a geriatric specialist or gerontologist, because these doctors specialize in working with seniors, even those with younger onset dementias. Your primary care physician may be treating some of your illnesses that you have, but they may not be up to date on everything that goes on with seniors. We talked about the psychoses related with different dementias and how those should be treated differently. So make sure you see a geriatric specialist, not necessarily a neurologist right off the bat. Neurologists are hard to get in to see these days, but look for that geriatric specialist. Discuss these options with your doctor. And again, be aware that your physician is educated in medicine, not the different types of senior living options. When you go to look at a national or a local referral agency, they are a great resource. These are places like caring.com or A Place for Mom. They provide basic information pertaining to communities in the location you may be searching for, but they're only going to send you to those locations that they have signed a contract with. So there may be options out there that you're not aware of if you go through a referral source, because they're only going to refer you to those organizations that have signed a contract with them. You do not pay a referral source. That is actually illegal in Florida. They get paid by the organization that they've signed a contract with. So if you go through a Place for Mom and they send you to ABC Assisted Living and you move into ABC Assisted Living pays a Place for Mom for that referral. So it doesn't cost you anything out of pocket. But what I like to warn everyone about a little bit is, once one of these agencies shares your information to their communities that have a contract with them, those communities have marketing directors who have a job to do. And their job to do is to call you and try to get a hold of you to talk to you about what you're looking for. They can be very persistent because that is what they are told to be. So you may have calls like you've never seen before, because if your information goes out to 10 or 12 different communities and 10 or 12 different marketing directors are getting a hold of you, be prepared. That's all I can say. They are doing their job and they're very good at their job, but we want to make sure you're prepared for what's going to happen once you put your name out there with a referral agency. And you don't have to use a referral agency, but they may help you do some of the footwork, which is useful these days.